Hello, my fellow Stoics. Welcome to our live of the program LIVREMENTE, our first live in English language, and it's an honor for me to do this first episode with a guest, which is Dr. Dan Gartenberg. I'm Ivandro Monteiro, and I'm a clinical psychologist, and I have this program that I started about 1 year and a half with the two main objectives. The first one is to give science to people in order for them to know themselves better, to improve their lives. And sometimes I do this show by my own, and many times I do this show with several guests. So tonight I bring to you a colleague of mine from New York. He's a psychologist and a sleep specialist, and he's here to join us in our lives. So let me just invite him to get in. And hi.
Hey.
Good evening here and good afternoon there, right?
Yes, it is 5 in the afternoon here. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. May I call you Dan for our show tonight?
Yeah.
It's an honor to have you here in my program, and we are happy to give some science to our followers tonight, because you work with you're working within an area that is a kind of public health issue, I believe, because we see several issues and several problems about sleep, and we know that this makes some changes in our emotions, and it kinds of increases our vulnerability to feel worse in our lives. But before we talk about your specialty, for our followers to know who you are, who's Dr. Snooze or Dr. Dan?
Yeah. So people started calling me Dr. Snooze when I did this thing called TED Talk Residency, and it just sort of stuck, and that's my Instagram handle. I'm a researcher. I'm a cognitive psychologist, so that basically means I'm an experimental psychologist, and I'm always just looking for ways to enhance sleep. And I work with Penn State University to try to validate various techniques to improve sleep, and also recently the University of Arizona. And we're actually getting grants with the National Institute of Health to see if we can create a new form of treatment for insomnia that can actually reduce conversion to Alzheimer's and related dementias, because these are expected to be the #1 health costs to the U.S. system in the next 20 years as the baby boomers age out. But I'm also sort of one of the first biohackers, and I work with Dave Asprey on a couple projects on just sleep optimization and quantifying the self. And I'm really all about personalized medicine, and with emotions that you're talking about is really relevant right now with COVID sort of isolating everyone.
Because about sleep it has a lot to do with our vulnerability, emotionally speaking. So we have a strong impact in our lives because of our sleep habits, and people sometimes, or maybe too many times, they forget about that, right?
Yeah, I like to say we actually do a little death every day when we fall asleep. It's like a micro death, and when we decide to fall asleep and let ourselves fall asleep, there's a letting go to it, and there's a vulnerability to it, and you can't let go when you can't succumb to the daily death. That's when we have a lot of trouble sleeping, and when we're anxious in our daily lives, that's problematic. And if you're really traumatized by something in your life, then it pervades into our dreams, and there's all these stuff with nightmares and I can talk to that as well.
And maybe it's not only the the traumas that might have happened to us, but also maybe the excessive stimulus that we spend all our days, right? So we spend too much time occupied. Don't you think people need to stop to feel more the moment?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like I call it the trifecta of quarantine. Number one, we're indoor creatures now and we don't activate our circadian rhythm. Number two,
Mm-hmm.
just more stressed. Because it's sort of a stressful thing. Um, and then number three, we're in our devices all the time now,
Yeah.
bombarded with information, and all these things together make it for a crummy sleep. And
I believe you attend patients, you receive patients in your practice.
so I actually just do coaching because I'm not an actual clinical
Okay.
psychologist, and I empower other coaches and some clinicians with our software, Sleep Space.
Yeah. So a kind of a sleep trainer for
Yeah,
people to improve and personal development skills to
right.
make it happen.
That's
But
exactly right.
when we
So
combine those,
go ahead.
when we combine that area where we deal with people who are not ill and they are struggling to create good habits in their lives, I do clinical practice, and maybe one of the most frequent symptoms that I see in almost all my patients with depressions, with anxieties, with phobias, uh, they all have a kind of bad habit in the respect for their biology, considering the rhythms, their biological rhythms, because they go late to bed, they get up early. When they are in bed, they use their phones, their tablets, the computer. They worry too much all the time. They don't have time to appreciate the moment, to disconnect for their worries, and and life is made of choices. So as a coach, what kind of recommendations you give to people to combine those recommendations with the sleep space app that you have?
Yeah, and such a big question, and
Yeah.
it's very. So I actually did a coaching session earlier today. Usually we spend the first half of the session really delving into what's going on with the person. The way that I like to think about it is there's usually 1 to 3 things specific to you that you can do tonight that can improve your sleep quality. And so,
Mhm.
like, take me for an example. Maybe I shouldn't totally admit to this, but it took us a while to get blackout blinds in our home.
Okay.
Because we recently moved and there's just some technical aspects to it. And
Hmm.
I knew in the past couple months that I really needed to get back that bonds. So that was the thing that I implemented behaviorally recently that I think has really helped. And that was very specific to me in my situation. And I think everyone sort of has those things. The tension,
Hmm.
oftentimes technology does more harm than good. So that's been the struggle with sleep space is how do you actually make a tech that helps you with your sleep and doesn't make you like more addicted to looking at your device, for example. So
So
there's
it's a kind of way of relaxing the client or the patient by using an app that teaches him to know their bodies and improve their behaviors to be more relaxed.
so that's a big component of it, and we have guided relaxations like progressive muscle relaxation is something that I'm sure you're familiar with, and
Yes. Uh-huh.
yoga, yoga
I
knee.
love your app actually. I installed it and it's
Oh,
really
cool.
interesting. Yeah.
And so that's a big part of it. Training to relax, and usually, as you know, like 30 to minutes to an hour, having a wind down ritual. I think about sound, light, and temperature as
Mhm.
levers that can be enhanced, that can be used to enhance someone's sleep. Light, you really
Dark
want
place, right?
what?
Dark place.
Yeah, dark, quiet, cool, I guess is what they say.
Yeah.
But there's more or less you can do with that. So like we have this whole wind down ritual where everything turns red a half an hour before bed. It goes into a sound machine, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You want to block out noises throughout the night. Our brains actually respond to abrupt sounds, but if
Mm-hmm.
you have a sound machine, it makes things less abrupt. It kind of rounds out noises, and that'll keep.
It's really interesting what you're saying because um, today I see a lot of patients that many times they see their bodies as something completely independent from their mind, and this worries me because people they keep forgetting that the mind only works if you have a neurobiology, if you have a respect for their neurobiology, right? Because we need a body to make things happen.
Total. I mean, and this is partly what I got into psychology because of the theory of embodiment, which was a big
Yeah.
proponent of cognitive psychologist George Lakoff,
Mm-hmm.
who I looked up to a lot when I was starting out as a psychologist. But you know, that theory, there's some classic studies where our bodies are connected to our minds, you know, and they have some classic study where you simulate like a frown by putting a pencil like this or
Mm-hmm.
something, and that primes you to more negative stimuli. I think there's
Mm-hmm.
more evidence than that, but basically our bodies dictate our higher level cognitive processes, and sleep is such a strong example of that. You know, there's some classic findings that if someone is bipolar, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and they go to a place like in the Antarctic where they get 24/7 light exposure, it can
Mm-hmm.
activate like a mania, for example,
Yeah.
because of how the biology of sunlight impacts our alertness system and stuff like that. That's just one example, I think, of
Yeah.
what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. So, so we know that the number of hours that we sleep is actually dependent in the intensity and the frequency of several symptoms in the following days. So many of my patients, one of and that's something we see everywhere, is that people tend to abuse their time to go to sleep, and then they get up early and they sleep, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 hours, and then they become anxious, they become depressed with lack of patience to communicate with other people, getting into conflicts, making more bigger and strong transitions that they then regret later.
Sure.
So people start having more impulsiveness and more problems because of this single thing, which is the respect for their sleep.
I mean, I think we would be we would live in such a happier, nicer world if 40% of the population who sleep deprives themselves actually got an extra hour of sleep.
Yeah.
And that's the stats in the United States. I'm not sure what it's like in other countries, but we're
I
chronic.
think it's becoming a kind of wide way of living, this lack of sleep.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's all tied in together with these mental health issues. I mean, and you know, it varies. Even you're speaking about there's individual differences, and it also varies within myself. So just to
Mm-hmm.
speak about individual differences first, they say, and the Academy of Sleep Medicine has come out with a consensus statement that adults need 7 to 9 hours on a regular basis, which is a pretty big range.
Yep.
But you know, basically, you need at least 7. Almost every 99% of people.
It's interesting also because sometimes we know that people who sleep longer, they become sleepy and they have headaches because of they sleep 9 or more hours. So it's not good to make these big changes in the number of hours that we sleep in a small period of time, right? Because that will lead to more mental health issues.
Well, I mean, I guess the simpler way I think about it is you want to be as consistent as possible, and if you sleep deprive yourself, you don't fully make up for it. And just what you're saying before, like there's all these classic studies where in gambling you make more risky decisions when you're sleep deprived. You actually lose your sense of humor when you're sleep deprived. There's a lot of stuff showing how sleep deprivation causes problems. There's
We
just
also become hyperactive, right?
sorry.
We also become hyperactive in the following days when we are sleep
Okay.
deprived.
Your attention is all over the place.
It works for me because every time I spend 2 or 3 days sleeping less, I know that in the following day my mind will be working as hell.
Huh.
So, for example, this last three days, I just finished my third book, which is We Change by What We Do, and I like to write at night. So I wrote this last chapter until, I don't know, 2, 3 a.m. But I know that I'm a kind of hyperactive yesterday and today because I slept less hours than usual.
And
But I know that tonight I'm going to sleep better.
I mean, and I'm also, and I play some of this game too, and I see a comment about how quality is also important. Of course, it's not just duration, it's also the quality of your sleep. And if you have bad quality, you should and there's something physiologically wrong, like sleep apnea or something else. You try to resolve that. But, you know, once you have that metacognition of where you're at, so like if you're a professional athlete, I'm in grant writing mode right now, which is like the athletics for academic. So I know that I'm pushing my limits of like a more manic state. And when I get into that frame of mind, my body actually needs less sleep. When you're manic, you don't want as much. When you're depressed, you want to sleep more.
Yeah.
So one of the things to break out of a mania is to sleep more, eat a full meal and sleep more, eat more regularly. Not that I or anything, but
that's a big thing, and that's the point, because it's the changes and the way we can reduce our vulnerabilities usually starts with small and simple things, like the sleep, not only the amount of hours, but the quality of hours. And that's something that your app does too, because you assess the deep sleep, right? The number of REM and non-REM sleeps that you have during the nights.
Yeah, so we have our own Apple Watch algorithm that we validated against polysomnography data, which is gold standard EEG, and then we also compare it to Oura Ring, and we'll integrate with Oura Ring too. And we also enable you to control in the recent update, we enable you to control your sleep need, because people generally have different needs, and it does fluctuate a little bit within an individual too, but generally we have the same need. I mean, if I'm sick, for example, you should sleep more because your body's sick. You know, when I got COVID, for example, my body needed to sleep more, and there's a way counteracts it. So there are different reasons why you sleep more or less, but we enable you to set a goal, set your bedtime goal based on a chronotype test that you can do in our survey, and then try to stick to that consistent goal. And, you know, it's okay if you're a night owl as long as you're consistent. There's some disagreement about this, but my belief is generally there's nothing wrong with being a night owl. There's an evolutionary biology reason why some people are night owls and some people are morning larks. You can actually get a blood test that'll tell you if you have some of these genes. And that's one thing we do with clients.
And that just makes us different between all of us. So no one is better or worse because of these differences. And most people, sometimes they try to copy others to create their habits. And sometimes the solution of other people is my problem. So I need to understand what is my solution by becoming inspired by someone. But I don't want to copy that someone, because if I don't know who I am and I don't know my abilities, that's a real problem, because we need that self-knowledge to make the change and to make it happen.
I think you're tapping on something that I'm trying to break open, but it's easier said than done. And you know, a perfect example of what you're saying is like, if you're someone who struggles with falling asleep and staying asleep,
Mm-hmm.
and you identify that way, you should never take a nap, right? If you're an
Yeah.
insomniac, basically you shouldn't take a nap. But if you're an athlete who's trying to, you know, build muscle mass or something, or get that right
Mm-hmm.
game day,
Yeah.
or you're wrestling with an intense, you know, I think it's all. I think of high performers like intense thinking, you know, academics or you know executives also in this category. Then a power nap could be perfect for you.
Yeah.
One example of having the metacognition to know who you are, and then identifying properly with the group of people you are, and then finding that playbook that's right for you.
Exactly.
I think an AI
Because
solve some of that,
yeah.
even people solving that. And so I want to empower people like you and coaches to help
Mm-hmm.
navigate that, because you guys are the ones that have the most experience, you know, classifying people into their category, you know?
Yeah, to know the structure, to know with what they are dealing with. Because if I don't know who I am and how I work, it's really difficult for me to function in the world, to understand my context, to understand how I can connect to others, how I can improve my communication skills, what behaviors should I do to be more adapted to the situations of my life. And one of the things that you mentioned when you talked about the quality of sleep, the thing is that our body talks to us. So the body and our metacognition, so the way we can listen our body, it's a kind of dialogue. It's a kind of dance that we should know how to dance with the body in order to understand what he's telling us. Because if we really listen, the body knows the solution. So if I'm anxious, my heart rate is increasing. I'm sweating. I feel my muscles tense. So if I'm tired, my body asks for a bed or some nap. So we need to listen, and we need to understand and have that metacognition.
Totally. And one of the big things we suggest for in cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the main things is know when you're tired and only going to bed when tired. That's an example. And I'm shocked in the States that we don't teach children how to reliably reduce their heart rate. Like that should be a thing
Exactly.
taught in
Hmm.
basic education. You know, if you
No
have
one knows.
what?
No one knows. It's like going to it's like going to the emergency room in an hospital with an anxiety attack. And what do you hear? Most of my patients, they usually come from the hospital just with a electrocardiogram, just to confirm that it's not a heart attack. And then the doctor says, "Well, that's only anxiety. Go home." But that's the point. We only start working with anxiety if we start facing anxiety as it is, instead of denying it. Because every time we deny the symptoms, it will be stronger. It will keep more time with us, and it will increase the vulnerability of more deeper problems. So
Yeah.
we need really to understand and to listen our bodies. And that's why one of the things that you do with sleep space is to teach people to assess and to understand where they become more vulnerable or where they become more resilient by understanding their sleep.
No, yeah, I appreciate you saying that. That's what we're trying to do. A big part of it is also we'll display your circadian rhythm. So everyone has
Mm-hmm.
a unique rhythm. And so we'll measure your sleep from the last night. And based on that, you'll have dips and peaks in your alertness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we know that, of course, sleep has an impact in our mind and our behaviors and emotions. What else do we need, or we should recommend to people to be more resilient and to adapt easier in life, facing problems or facing
Yeah,
some situations?
I'm going to lay like a framework out for you.
Uh-huh.
This is what got me passionate into sleep originally. And sleep is basically how we process the information in our lives. It's how we make sense of the world. It's our information processing system. And there's a theory called Synaptic Homeostasis hypothesis, which states the following. Basically, during deep sleep, that's when we downregulate all the neurons in our brain. And it's also how when we clean out metabolic waste, which is related to dementia.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we downregulate everything for the day, we downregulate things in such a way that the things that are relevant to our survival rise to the top. So what happens, for example, if you were traumatized, you should actually inhibit your REM sleep so you don't ingrain this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, because the trauma is so relevant to your survival, it gets over ingrained. So basically, deep sleep down regulates everything. And then during REM, you replay and integrate that into your dreams and your long-term personality and process.
And that combines with the importance of doing the therapy in order to understand of what to do with the experience of trauma. Because the more we give a meaning to the suffering that an experience gives us in life,
right,
the more fluid and the more flexible that emotion becomes. So we start improving the symptoms and the intensity and the frequency of our diagnosis if we actually do a structure therapy at this and at the same time doing what is necessary with a biological basis to help the body heal itself. And so by respecting those things, those evidences that we find in those researches, we need also to have the work of facing those difficult issues in order to give some meaning to the suffering. Because like Viktor Frankl said, if we give meaning to suffering, usually life moves better and works better, because it's always more difficult if we don't give meaning to the suffering.
Yeah, you want to like externalize that suffering so you can like process it and put it in its place. I leave that to you. I'm like more of a scientist, less of like actually to help people navigate all their subconscious traumas and processes. But as a mad scientist in all this, the vision that I see, and I would be curious if we could work together on something related to this, is integrating some of your practices when you're bringing out and dealing with someone's trauma, for example. And I've been studying dream completion therapy recently. I don't know if you use that in your practice.
No.
But it's basically this idea, a lot of times when you're traumatized, you'll have a recurring dream.
Yes.
And the idea is, what if you could program that dream to be the happy ending that you always wanted it to be? So, maybe, you're chasing after someone and they never look back. But then you can think of a creative solution for the dream. Like they look back and it's your loving caregiver or something like that. And then
it's really, really interesting, because if we give the meaning to those trauma experiences, and if those experiences are more understandable, I'm sure that emotionally speaking, we'll have a better sleep because we understand better the trauma, right?
No, I mean, a lot of times certain people, these dreams chronically disturb their sleep. And so I think there's this weird behavioral and classical, psychological solution that I think you deal with your clients more.
Yeah.
But imagine you're focusing on this new vision for the dream, or this new vision of yourself, while you're listening to a sound, for example, and you're meditating on that new vision or new dream.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have some, this is when the mad scientist comes in, I have some tech where I can replay the sound while you're in a nightmare or while you're dreaming to prime the neural processes around this new dream that you want to basically inception into your mind. And that's a weird direction that I'm trying to validate another version of our tech with.
I'm curious about that because it's interesting, the idea.
It's kind of crazy, and so I'm gonna write a grant on that.
Good. So we have here some comments. So Irina Macaire, whenever I have some free time, I either read a book or listen to a podcast, and sometimes I feel I need to take a break and just let my thoughts run free. Exactly. So it's the mindfulness experience, right? It's the carpe diem moment. We all need those experiences to live life. What I usually say is that life is the interval between responsibilities and duties. It's there in those intervals where life happens. So if you don't appreciate life in those intervals, you're gonna miss life.
I should take your advice on that. I need to do that.
Yeah. And here's Irina also saying that reminds me how important it is to take a break and just be. I totally agree with Dan. As a sleep coach, I have a framework that I follow to guide myself when I'm working with clients. But the first time I do is to see what is the first thing they can do to improve. And this is a really important thing because when we are vulnerable or when we are having problems, usually when we are dealing with emotions, we are dealing with frustrations. So it's not overcoming a good experience. So we are more frustrated than with positive feelings. So the only way to become more positive is to have objectives that you can actually do in this moment of your life. So if you can start doing with what you can, with what you have, with what you are in this moment, that's where we should start to improve anything in our lives.
And that's what I love about sleep science is some of the things are like really easy to implement. Like it's not like diet and exercise, it can be harder sometimes because it's like more rigorous. With sleep, it's like you do the thing and then sometimes it's resolved forever. It's like, for example, that
one of the things that I usually do is every time I'm tired, I don't take any permanent decision in my life.
Oh, nice.
So if I'm tired, if I'm sad or anxious, I decide not to have permanent decisions in that moment. So I postpone the decision for tomorrow because I don't like to take definitive decisions in temporary situations.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's this whole interesting thing, and you were talking about like wanting to write at night, and like I have a similar thing where like there's like a time in the day for certain decisions too, and I think this is impacted by your chronobiology. So
that's the timing, right? It's the timing. You have to listen to timings.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a reason why, like, you're basically revving up your neurons throughout the day, and so at night you have this more creative energy. I think that is for a lot of people, and you can do this more strict analytical thinking earlier on in the day. And I think about when I plan my day, basically.
And creativity needs two things. Needs carpe diem moments, because the more occupied you are, the less creative you're going to be. So we need fare niente time, right?
Yep.
and then we need to be a kind of by our own, because being alone also helps to be more creative many times. So usually during the night, and most artists sometimes, and they create their arts during the nights.
Yeah.
So it's important really for each one of us to find the right timing to know where we work better instead of imitating or copying someone.
Exactly.
Irina also shares with us that yoga nidra meditation is so nice to practice for relaxations even you don't sleep. So that's another suggestion. Thank you. Actually, you have several meditation techniques in your Sleep Space app, right?
Yeah. So like, if you really want to like do the most effective one, you do the passive muscle relaxation, where you focus on the muscles and tense all the muscles, go through each muscle group. It's usually around 10 minutes. It's nice because once you do it, you can sort of just do it without the guide, so you don't even need the phone after a while.
Yeah.
Then there's also passive muscle relaxation, where it's a little bit easier to do, but you're not actually tensing the muscle, you're just focusing on it. And then
it's what. Go ahead. Sorry.
And then there's like yoga nidra, nature sounds, and then like sleep stories and stuff, where it's just like visualization exercises and different people, basically.
One of the strongest ways to relax when we are tensed or we need to improve our sleep is the Jacobson technique. Jacobson technique is also using muscles and relaxation, the contrast between contraction and relaxation with our muscles from mind to feet.
Sure, I should know that.
From head to feet.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm not familiar with that one. I'm going to look into that more.
Yeah, Jacobson. Irina says also here, to the point, most of the mental health disorders have sleep disorders that accompany them. Exactly. It's not only about sleep duration, it's about sleep quality. That's what you mentioned a little bit early. You can also check in your chronotype, if you're a night owl or wolf. Yes, exactly. It's interesting because sometimes when we deal with couples, usually couples, they work in this opposites. Well, not the opposites, this complements. So if we,
especially because you need to manage. Usually,
yeah,
at the shift. You know,
exactly. I'm a night owl. My wife loves to wake up early, so and that's why we work well.
A lot of times, though, I guess it varies, but yeah, for children, I see the practicality, and you can shift it too, obviously.
Yeah.
Anyway, what were you saying?
Same with personalities, because if you have someone with more openness, you're gonna get someone that it's more reserved. So it's more difficult to communicate. So if someone's like to go to the front of the balcony, someone likes to work in the back. So people combine their abilities and their characteristics, and if we accept the differences and if we respect these differences, then we find ourselves much easier, because we focus in ourselves instead of comparing with others, because that's something that really makes us vulnerable.
Yeah, and I mean, navigating with the partner is really interesting. You know, a lot of times you want to be on sync with your partner, because then you can spend time with them and stuff. I guess.
Let's go to bed together now.
Right, exactly. And you get in your cuddle time and all that good stuff. So I guess it matters the situation, and it's really, you ought to, I think, have like a real conscientious conversation with your partner on how you think the sleep schedule ought to be, you know, and maybe that discussion everyone should really have with their partner.
Yeah. Irina shares here that denying anxiety is so bad, so we cannot do that, of course. A lot of comments in the chat were written in real time as a comment. Oh, yes, I appreciate Irina. I was not reading during the live. I was talking, and only now at the end I usually see all the questions and the comments. I really appreciate your comments during this live. Well, so the last thing that I would like you to share with us is, uh, where can people find the sleep space, and why should they use it in
Oh,
their lives?
thank you for that. Yeah, so you can get a 30-day free trial of it if you do sleepspace.com/union.
Go get it, people.
Yeah. Give it away for free for 30 days, see if you like it. We use the science of sound, light, and vibration to try to enhance sleep. It has a smart alarm clock. It'll sync with various wearables like Aura, Whoop, Apple Watch. And we have a sleep diary, too, so you can give your subjective experience of your sleep. And
Mm-hmm.
trying to connect people with coaches that can give them personalized guidance, real people. Because at the end of the day, I think real people help real people. And so that's another part of our system.
Totally agree with that, because technology is only to support what we are doing. It's not because of it that we make the changes in our lives.
Totally. And the tech does more harm than good so often. So hopefully some tech can finally help one day.
Well, then, it was my pleasure to have you here in my show tonight. It was really good to talk about these things and about your speciality. And I truly believe that sleep is a biological issue that people should really address it in a more direct way. And don't ignore the symptoms of your body, because fortunately the body talks to us every day. When we are thirsty, when we are hungry, when we are sleepy, when we are tired. So listen to your body, and I'm sure that we can improve much better our lives. I don't know if you have any message to our followers.
Listen to your body.
Yes, listen to your body. Okay. If you don't follow us, I recommend you to follow us here in Instagram. Visit sleepspace.com, which is the site that Dan shared here with us tonight. This live will be available in my YouTube channel. It's the same name as the Instagram, and it's going to be also available here in Instagram. So if you have any sleep disorder or sleep vulnerability, or if you have someone in your family that needs some help about these issues, please share this live with them, because we are here to share science in a more easy way and to help people to become more equal to themselves. So take care and see you next time.
Happy sleeping.
Bye-bye.